Good afternoon, everyone. I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this honorable legislative assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this honorable legislative assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Okay, let the record show that the Public Accounts Committee is back in session, and we still have a quorum. And this afternoon, we're going to be dealing with the Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan, which is one of the licensed plans under the National Pension Office. And we're dealing with the reports, multi-year reports that were published on the website of the National Pension Office. And we may ask a couple of questions relating to the current COVID thing, because that has come out in evidence from all the other ones. So we some very generic questions, nothing specific too much. The rules are that when you answer the first question, you state your name and your title. That's just for the Hansard records, so that your visit here is preserved for a long time. And but we're not, as we've been telling people, this is not expected to be an adversarial session. We're not here to on a gotcha moment. We're trying to educate ourselves, the public, about the pension plans, and to get some broad information of where you're going with pension plans and what's happening in country. And I'll invite Mr. Chris Saunders, a member of the committee, to start off the questioning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon and welcome. Just to expand on what the chairman said, the purpose of what it is that the committee is looking to get from these meetings is to more inform the public. One of the reasons why this is just being done now is, as some of you are aware, is that for more than 10 years, none of the annual reports were actually published by the National Pension Office, and on a recent ruling by the Ombudsman, those reports were made public. So in the public's interest, and as part of our oversight responsibility for the Department of Labor and Pensions, and looking at those reports, the members thought it would have been best, in order to give everyone a much rounded view, not just to look at the regulators, but also those in which that they're all also supervising. So the primary purpose for us is more information gathering, but also, more importantly, public education.
One other general rule: we don't have a problem with you consulting with the people that you want and then coming to you to help answer questions. That's not a problem, okay? So feel free to give us the best possible answer to any questions if you have to cross-consult. Okay, good.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
Thanks, no problem. I mean, off the bat, the committee and all members of the Legislative Assembly probably will speak for, understands the importance of pensions. And one of the things that we have found in this recent crisis, and based on some of the complaints and to some extent some compliments, is that there's still a lot of public education that still needs to be undertaken. So our goal here is more for public information than anything else. As we have reminded all witnesses that has come thus far, is that when you look at the introduction of the National Pensions Law, it is mandated and clear that the pension law and the pension plans are there for the benefit of the employees. So this is pretty much what it is that we're looking for. What has happened has happened. There's nothing that we can do to change it. But the most important thing for us is to learn from what has happened and then see what it is that we can do better to actually make it better for the employees. So that is really what we're here for. There's no ambush, there's no gotcha. It's more to better understand the culture, what your plan is about, and everything else. We are guarded in a lot of the questions we do ask, and recognizing that we do have access to confidential information that's not in the public, So we try to move around that as much as possible, as not to give away anything that may be proprietary or anything like that to your organization. So with that said, the first question through you, Mr. Chairman, to the witnesses are, just briefly, can you give us an idea in terms of like the culture, the vision, what it is that you would want from your pension plan ultimately? Where do you see it going, and in terms of the value that it basically brings, not just to the islands as a whole, but in particular to your members, which are, for us that are elected in this house, our constituents. So, and that's pretty much what we're just trying to get more from a public education standpoint. So, I don't know which would prefer to take that question, and thanks.
We leave it to you all to decide who is to answer, and both can answer. We're not going to provide any restrictions for you to hide behind.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation, and my name is Josino Koyakobo. I'm the chair-elect, effective April 2020, and I've been a trustee since May of last year. So it would only be fair for myself and the chamber, and I will introduce my colleague, Paul Schreiner, which is the chair exiting, which has been a trustee for 5 years? 5 years, and so that's how we will address these, and then our other colleagues will be associated with any other conversations or answers to appropriately reflect and deliver the appropriate answers that the chamber is asking.
Good afternoon, thank you. My name is Paul Schreiner. I am a former trustee. I was a trustee from, sorry, let me back up. I'm the accounting and credit manager for A.L. Thompson. This is my real job. I was a trustee from May of 2014 through May of 2020. During that time, I was the chairperson for 5 years. That's why the chambers asked me to come along with Mr. Gio just becoming newly chairperson. The basic question that Mr. Saunders had asked about the culture of the chamber plan. The chamber plan, since my involvement, has been solely to benefit the membership. And that may seem very simple to say, but if you look at what we've done from May of 2014 through the current date, we have done a myriad of things. Just highlight a couple, including essentially decreasing our total cost to the membership by around 100%. I don't have the exact figure, but it's around that. We have improved the plan dramatically through many recommendations and through using consultants. We have renegotiated every one of our contracts with a service provider to get a lower cost to the plan. We have made the plan less risky to the membership as they perform. And so that culture is driven by the trustees. There are 9 of us. We are volunteers. We are not paid one dime. We don't get a lunch. We don't get a drink. We get nothing other than giving our time. And our 2 employees who sit with us here today, who also drive that culture throughout and down into our service providers.
Thank you very much for that. And first of all, I just want to thank all the volunteers who give up their time. That is always something that is welcome in this regard, and I also think should be commended. In terms of your risk profile, you had mentioned that you had kind of made some changes from a risk standpoint. Just out of curiosity, what is the process in terms of like your investment committee, like who are those members, and what's the process you use in terms of choosing what to invest, where to invest, and how to invest? Just kind of briefly walk us through that. Thanks.
So The trustees are not investment managers. The trustees are not investment professionals. Absolutely not. The trustees don't make those investment decisions. That service is done by Mercer Investment Consulting. Mercer Investment Consulting, as you probably know, is a worldwide investment consulting firm. They're one of the leaders of the industry. They'd be on par, at least, with the Morneau Chappelle that I know the government uses for the public service consulting. So Mercer Investment Consulting provides us with updates regularly about what's happening in the industry, what to do, how to invest, their best thought for what's happening in the pensions world, let's say. So the trustees don't make those decisions. The trustees rely on worldwide experts, and based on their reports or their recommendations, the trustees do either accept or reject their recommendations. But of course, not being investment professionals, it would be hard to reject a worldwide professional's best recommendation.
Thanks very much. Is there, so when Mercer makes the recommendation, is there basically then the committee that basically approves or modifies, or do they accept a recommendation wholesale? Sorry. Sorry, do they accept the recommendation wholesale, or is there a process where it's being discussed, or we're just kind of trying to figure out, like, the governance culture is really what we're trying to get into? Thanks.
No, nothing is taken just from a consultant and said, oh, thank you very much for this report, let's go with it. It would be reviewed by an investment subcommittee, which has the trustees on it. As a subset of the trustees. It would also be reviewed, of course, by the whole set of trustees. And the type of thing we're talking about Mercer doing is the trustees asking Mercer, is our basket of investments correct for our membership, our population, our rules and regulations in the Cayman Islands? Mercer would then go and look at that and give us suggestions for yes, it is or isn't. Mr. Saunders, I'll give you an example. 4 or 5 years ago, the chamber plan was actively managed. I'm sure we all know what active management from an investment standpoint is. And Mercer came to us and said, you know, the worldwide population of pension plans is moving to passive index management. A couple big reasons that Mercer had provided to us with empirical evidence was that it's lower cost. So lower cost, obviously, is great for our membership. The second reason is it's empirically shown you cannot, in the long term, as we all know, pensions are very long term, upwards of 40 years, you cannot actively beat a broad-based indexed, meaning the stock market, for example. You can't be smarter than the stock market. It's impossible. If it was, the stock market wouldn't be efficient. So Mercer tells us things like this. I'm sure I see some of you nodding your heads. It makes sense. It made sense to the trustees. So I forget the time frame, 3 or 4 years ago, we accepted their recommendation to move from active management, high-cost active management, to low-cost indexed funds. That'd be an example of how that worked.
Sorry, thanks much. I noticed from your financial statements ending June 30th, 2019, that in the notes of the financials, I see where you also add some other investment, like I see where Butterfield was doing some work for you guys, and I see like other companies being listed. In terms of those relationships, how does that fit in overall, like with what Mercer does versus like what Butterfield would do to some extent?
I don't think you're asking the correct question, sir. Mercer doesn't do investing for us. Mercer
Do the consulting.
They're the consultant who advises us who we should put the money with, who then does the investing.
Okay, so Mercer would basically tell you then to put the money with, like, say, Butterfield or... Like,
For an example.
So they'll be the one who will advise you who to use.
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I was trying to understand, sorry.
Nope.
So from that standpoint, and so once Mercer gives you that decision, then do you guys just, and they would tell like what percentage to give to Butterfield or to whichever entity, or?
No, sir. Again, the trustees don't make those decisions. The trustees are not the investment professionals. Mercer's the investment professional. So Mercer, for example, says, that, I'll give you a broader picture if I may. Let's have life cycle funds for your membership. A life cycle funds means for someone who's 20 years old, they're going to be, I'm throwing these numbers out, 95% equities, 5% in bonds. Someone who's 40 years old is going to have 60% equities, 40% bonds. Someone who's 60 years old is going to have 20% equities, 80% bonds. Those numbers aren't right, don't quote me on them. That's the idea. It's called, you have a path of risky to non-risky. Mercer tells us things like that. And in that analysis, we say, okay, who's going to manage the equities? Who's going to manage the bonds? They say, okay, well, let's go to our worldwide experts on who are good equity managers. And they come with 2 to 3 managers. And they say, here's the pros of these managers. This one has lower costs, this one has higher costs, this one has XYZs, that, different. And who can manage the bonds? These ones have these costs, these ones have those costs, these ones have good, blah, blah, blah. And so they come up with their, from a large pool, we don't even know who that pool is because that's not our business. They come up with a pool of 2 to 3, and out of the 2 of 3, they give the pluses or minuses, and they give their best recommendation of those 2 or 3. Specifically to Butterfield, it's my understanding, was investment house, let's call it, from the beginning of the plan. How that started, I can't answer. But that's how it currently happens, is that Mercer goes to the world, says who is the best investment from a equity and a bond area, and here's who they would recommend. And then the trustees take that from their subcommittee, investment subcommittee, to a recommendation to the full board, and the full board would then either accept or not accept.
And just, again, from my own understanding, the investment committee or the trustees, that is different from the other Chamber of Commerce board, or is it the same board?
The Chamber of Commerce pension plan, technically, it has nothing to do with the Chamber of Commerce, actually. There is no commingling. There is no common board members. The Chamber does appoint 2 trustees to the Chamber plan, and those people are on 3-year rotating schedules. That would be the only true fingers into the plan, if you could use those terms.
Okay, one of the things that had popped up as we were preparing for this, I noticed they were in the media, there was a situation involving, I think, one of the investment managers or someone that was working that basically stole some money. Was it this plan?
Sir, I can tell you that was before 2014. It was this plan, but I don't have any details. That was well before when I started, so I can't speak to it. But it was this plan.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, what I'm curious about then, for the amount of money that would have gone missing, like where would that replacement for those funds would have come from? Would it have been where the existing members would have eaten that cost, or did someone put that money back in there or something? I'm just trying to understand, like, where the extra money would have come from to make up what would have been gone.
So, sir, as I said, this predates me, but the stories that I have been told, and I do say they're stories because I've never seen a document, the stories that I've told, and I believe it's actually in one of these annual reports because I did read them, that the service provider that sort of had a bad control around that chamber employee reimbursed the plan essentially 100%. I don't have fact to that. I have story, and I also have in one of these reports, I don't know which year, but I did read all 3 of those, that I had some sort of, during my time frame. So the membership, again, I believe, through my understanding, did not lose 1 dime in that.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad you actually clarified between the Chamber of Commerce versus this, because that's one of the things I could never really understand. So that's actually pretty good. Now, in terms of the trustees, you say you only have like 2, is it only 2 employees that you have full-time that actually works?
That's correct. These 2 lovely people with us, yeah.
Okay, I noticed, well, the reason why I asked is that, was it always 2, or was there at one point more than 2?
During my frame, there's been 1, and we added a second. So I can't speak to any time before 2014, but there's only been one or two.
No, I was looking at your financial statements, and I noticed there was a significant reduction in the 2019 statement. There was significant reduction in staff costs that kind of jumped out at me, so I was just wondering what was the...
I don't have that information
Okay,
in front of me, but I can tell you, we went from 1 to 2 and not the other way.
Okay. Okay, no problem, that's fine. In terms of the recent government announcement that allow people for the early withdrawals, I mean, so far, I mean, like, what percentage of your membership have decided to take up that offer? And roughly, like, what's the value in terms of that you see the fund probably would be paying out as a result of that uptake?
Okay, so like I said, I'm not involved as I used to be, but I do have a lot of information here. But Randy just gave me this. For the month of May, which was the first month it was available, we had, I'm going to round numbers here, 8,100 applications for withdrawal. We have about 16,000 current members, so that's about 50%-ish. The total value of those withdrawals will end up being 92 million. Just so you know, that's about 20% of the plan. Okay. On the 12th of June, we sent out money to approximately 1,500 people with a value of about 21.4 million. On the 16th, sorry, I said, is that right? Yeah, the 12th of June, yeah. On the 16th of June, we sent out another approximately 2,600 payments with a value of about $29 million. I can confirm we've been within the 45-day limit, yeah? We've been within the 45-day limit on all of our payments thus far, and we would intend to keep it that way. I was involved before I stepped down, knowing this was going to happen, and we put processes in to speed up our valuation of the fund. I'll just say dramatically, because I don't have a stronger word than that.
And the NAV used, sorry, 1 second before, the NAV that you use in terms of the valuation, what month's NAV would you have used? Like for those that got paid in May and...
So the way it works in this industry, and I'm not in the industry, but I got a lot of lessons on this industry for 6 years. If you ask for a withdrawal anytime during a month, so let's just say the month of May, whether it's May the 1st or May the 31st, your valuation date is May the 31st. You only value the fund the last day of the month, no matter, and that person who asked on the 1st gets the value on the 31st as well. And we've used May the 31st.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Just going back to the pension withdrawal for the COVID relief, of the 50% who have opted for a withdrawal option, can you state how many of them have opted for the minimum withdrawal option, i.e. up to $10,000, versus those who have opted to take the minimum plus 25% of their overall pension fund value?
Sorry, no idea.
Could this information be provided to the committee at a future period?
Yeah, we take note of that one.
Mr. Chairman, if you could instruct them in the usual way how best to achieve that.
Can just send it to Ms. Minister Webb, the email that you got the invite and stuff from, and then that'll come direct to the committee. Thank you very much. numbers are like some generic stuff. One of the things that we think we extracted from the pension regulators yesterday is a commitment to bring all of the annual reports up to date by the end of the year. Has the Chamber plan submitted the statutory documentation for 2018 and 2019?
Yeah, I don't know of any year we've ever been behind. We absolutely have complied with all the laws and regulations.
Right.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, sir. Go.
Okay. Second is, we were concerned to learn yesterday that the commencement of the 2016 legislation in totality has not happened. And the new investment regulations that were told to us here in this parliament by the government that were so absolutely necessary, here we are 5 years later and they have not been done. Is the lack of commencement of the 2016 law and the absence of the, what I would regard as improved investment regulations and criteria, presenting any difficulties to your plan?
I'm smiling. We've worked around the difficulty, sir. That's what I can tell you. The investment regulations, as they're currently written, not the new ones that aren't enforced, the ones that are enforced, from the Chamber's perspective, are not good. The regulations are many, many, many pages long. How many pages long? About 15 pages long. And I believe, from my memory, if you look at the public service pension regulations, it's 6 or 8 lines, 15 pages versus 6 or 8 lines. We don't see that as being reasonable. We don't understand why either the public service or the private sector would have different rules. Nobody should be able to gain or be disadvantaged by having different rules.
I can probably help you with that because I was the one who went through that agonizing period in the early 1990s. It is because the Chamber of Commerce in particular and the private sector pension providers insisted that they have different rules, because the plan that was proposed for the country was much closer to the government plan than what the multiplicity that we have today. So that is where that 15 pages come from, because what they were trying to do, I think in those 15 pages, was to write legislation for every possible crook that could come to the island, and you just can't do that. But it is interesting to hear you refer to the new regulations are written but not yet implemented, because the evidence we have been given so far is that the regulations are not written and that they're waiting on some additional consultative process to take care. And one of the things that we've asked other pension providers who have come before this committee is to invite you all to exert some pressure on the government to get these things done so that you can better provide for your membership, because what this is all about is providing the best possible pension plan for the members to retire with.
I think what I was referring to is there is some sort of draft from 2016, a consultation draft. So yeah, you're probably right. They're probably not fully written. But we, as I said, we've worked around sort of the regulations, and I mean that in a good way. And no, we're not breaking the law. I'll just give you an example, though. The law, as it's been at least interpreted by the DLP, says that if you you cannot own any one stock, I think it's in excess of 5% of your total value. Seems reasonable. But they interpret it, and this might be the right interpretation, that if you hold a mutual fund, which is one mutual fund, but it might have 1,000 underlying stocks, and if you own 6% of that mutual fund, you're in violation of the law. That's the way it's been interpreted. So what we've done is we worked around that with our Mercer Investment Consulting, and we made our own, and we bought 1,600 stocks, individual ones, rather than one fund. It would have been cheaper. It would have been better for membership to buy one fund, but we worked around it. That's what I mean by working around. And that was a very good move for us.
Is the Mercer Investment Group that you use the same group that advised the government on and did the report on government on which the 2016 legislation was drafted?
I would have no idea who advised the government. I know who our investment, the person who we would call or email for an issue. I don't know who the government would have done.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I thought Morneau Sherpell, because I, as a member of the Chamber Pension Plan, then went to some meetings, and Morneau Sherpell was giving the presentation about the changes of the law at that time, rather than Mercer. But
I think there is instances in which they have employed Mercer, but I think the driving force behind the changes to the law was based on a Mercer report of the pension plans long time ago, probably 10 years ago. Yeah, and I think there was a more recent one by Mercer too. But anyway, I was just questioning to see whether there was any conflict.
not that I know of.
That's fine. Just one thing I just want to catch back on, looking at your number of the members that you have, and have you guys outsourced some other pension work to another entity, or all the payments, all the processes are being done by your 2 full-time employees?
Absolutely, we're outsourcing that service, sir.
Okay, and who's that outsourced to?
MUFG.
Okay, cool, that makes sense now. I was wondering how 2 employees was servicing, like, because I'm like, listen, if that's the case, we're going to be coming to outsource a lot of stuff to you guys. Well, thanks much. One of the standard questions that we generally close with is, what is it that you think that we can do or should stop doing that we think ultimately can make the pension plans more better, more effective in Cayman, especially for the employees and everyone else? You guys have clearly been in this business much longer, have a better understanding. You're on the front lines, and one of the things, as we said before, is that we want to make sure that when we do issue the report from this committee, it does include recommendations in terms of what it is that we can do to get some things better. So in terms of, with that said, I mean, I don't know if it's law, or if it's regulations, or just a general policy or something that we can do better to, I guess, just maximize the return for your members, which is basically the people that we also work for.
I can attempt to give you a few different bullet points. And I will tell you, even though I'm not a trustee at this point, the Chamber absolutely wants to help the government improve the pension plans on this island. We're not in it for the money. We're not, the Chamber plan is not for profit, as you probably know, or if you don't know, you know it now. So they are trustees who are not paid. The thing my colleague Randy just gave me is the compliance for Department of Commerce Investment, the Trade and Business Licensing body. There's supposed to be the rule that you're up to date with your pension plan, but there's no communication between DCI, or I'll say very, very little communication between DCI, the DLP, and certainly the pension plans. There are many, 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 I could say that for a long time, companies that are late or do not pay their pensions, and they're operating on a regular basis. These companies quite possibly will never pay their pensions. Quite possibly, they have taken the money from the employee. In my opinion, that would be stealing from the employee. The ability for the government to go after some of these companies and do something about that would be very key to help the membership, because people, members, employees, whether they be residents, Caymanians, non-Caymanians, won't have the funds because certain companies don't pay the funds in. That's
I have
terrible.
a question. Would you think it would be reasonable to consider some kind of ticketable offense under the law where a company is not providing a pension plan for its employees, where there's a small daily fine, as opposed to having to go through the courts? Because it seems that these things get tied up in courts for years and years and years and years, and then all the while the poor employee is suffering.
I would, that's possible, but how is, if you ticket them $50 for every day or whatever, doesn't matter, again, how would that be administered to stop to make the company pay that ticket plus the pension that they
Well, there's
owe?
there's a pretty effective system in government for paying tickets. If you don't pay the ticket and solve the problem, the fine automatically quadruples, and it doesn't necessarily have to rely on an arbitration process before the court.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, if the person is not likely to pay in the first place, it is more difficult.
Yeah.
But that is one of our big concerns, is there's still companies out there. I mean, I've had a complete from a constituent of mine as recently as this week that they've been working for a construction company for 5 years, and they thought they were getting a pension, that they had a pension. But when this opportunity came down to do the withdrawal, there's no pension plan. And there's no record, because they don't get the labor law required pay slips, which give deductions where they can demonstrate that one, it was taken or it was not taken. And that's a very difficult position to be. I have recommended that they report the company and the individual to the pension department and see if they can get them to recover because they should have been getting a pension. It's required by law.
The problem with the companies not paying is very, very broad in this country, and it's very sad. And I will say that I don't know if DLP is understaffed. I can't say that they are.
They say they are.
I can't say if they are or not, because I'm not there working.
Yeah.
What I can say is that there's little enforcement.
Right. Do you believe that some of the enforcement is because of the onerousness of the way the enforcement is structured and what is required, why it takes so long? That's why I was suggesting a ticketable offense as an administrative fee, as opposed to having to, because it always seems that the court system here is overworked and overbooked.
I don't know, because I don't know exactly what it takes. I do know it has to, if you're going to start going through the court system, you got to go to DPP. And they're, I'm sure, overworked as well. Ultimately, it needs to speed up. Enforcement needs to speed up. And I don't know how to do that, sir. But if timely enforcement, it would be the step number one, because you could catch companies, I say catch, in 3 months instead of 7 years down the road. And timely enforcement. But as well, you were speaking about an employee not getting his pay stub, so he doesn't know if he had pensions or not. The employees need to be more, I think Mr. Saunders said it earlier, need to be more informed about pensions and sort of think about this and say, why aren't I getting a statement? If I'm getting a pay slip, I need to look at it. I need to make sure it's correct. It goes hand in hand with, public education, I guess I would say.
To the question, what is the Chamber Pension Plan doing? One, to report and educate its current members, but also to expand its membership. What kind of what mechanisms do you use to achieve those two things?
To report the people who aren't paying to our membership?
Just to report the activities of the pension plan to your existing membership, but also to expand your membership to provide opportunities for people who are not getting pension as a part of a public education. I know the government is supposed to be doing that, but we need help all around here.
So, so what I can say is we do twice a year statements, which is not required by law. Only once is required by law. I think twice is going to be required if implemented. So we're speaking to our membership, and that costs a lot of money to do that, by the way. We have all the social media pages you could have, that sort of thing. We do outreach as we can, knowing that you have to be judicious about your outreach. You can spend a lot of money on outreach, and actually what you've done is just spent a lot of money and disadvantaged your membership because you spent all their money and nobody came and showed up because nobody cared. Can more be done? Yes. The Chamber, along with the other multi-employer pension plans for the past year or 18 months, meet regularly trying to bring up issues and trying to work together to educate the public, and also to try to push the DLP in areas that we think need pushing and need work.
From memory, there are two ways now that government is trying to monitor whether people have pensions. One is for work permit holders. You have to identify your pension plan before you can get the work permit. And as you mentioned earlier, the DCI process of getting a business license. Right? Unfortunately, the work permit process don't help Caymanians, right? So they don't have any way of intervening other than on the application for the business license, and they probably just says you have an active pension plan or you're a member of an existing pension plan, and it doesn't really drill down into whether your employees are all members of the pension plan.
Specifically about the DCI process, and I don't want to misspeak here, but I don't think I am. There's absolutely a process whereby, I'll just use my own company. When A.L. Thompson's wants to get its business license renewed, which it does every year, it goes to the Chamber Pension Plan and says, here's a list of my employees. I want you to certify, and there's a document, certify that I'm up to date and current with my pensions. We then get that document back. We then submit that to DCI. But DCI, if you don't submit it, you can just say they're up to date. You can self-certify. Correct? Yeah, you can self-certify. So if you're not done it, you just self-certify. So it's real simple. DCI just needs to say it is compulsory to have the certification from the pension plan. It solves the problem.
Quick question. Well,
Good that is going to come with a COVID-19, and this is part of it, because I would hazard a guess that at your next annual meeting, you're likely to have more members show up just because of this exercise here now.
That'd be great, because at our last meeting, did we have any true guests? Did we have any members that weren't required to be there because they weren't trusted? Basically, nobody shows up.
And I hope that is not an indication of how little effort you put into getting your members to come. I know it's not.
quick question. Going back to the issue of reporting, if you see a company is reporting X amount where they're sending their spreadsheet and it lists 5, 6, 10 employees, and then 1 month either no spreadsheet is submitted or 2 employees fall off that list, do you guys have a process where you reach out to the company and ask them, well, what happened to these 2 employees? Or if they have not submitted for a couple of months, well, do you reach out to the DLP and advise them that, well, we haven't seen anything from this one? Granted, they may have changed pension providers, but what is your own internal process in dealing with those kind of situations?
So if a company doesn't submit, our service provider, MUFG, would go to them and say, you haven't submitted, please submit. They then go on a report called an arrears report, which is submitted every month to the DLP. by some deadline, I don't know, 10th of the month, 15th of the month, something like that, submitted every month. So the DLP knows that Company A did not make their pension payments, and then they estimate what that pension payment might be. So if they submitted $3,000 the prior month, they would estimate it at $3,000. Makes sense. We do not, if barring the company getting back with the chamber plan, we don't know if that company went out of business, if they're in business, if they hired 30 people, if they let everybody go. We don't have any information.
Yeah, thanks very much. I really appreciate that answer.
Okay, keep reminding me. They know I didn't get in this, anyway. I want to thank you all for taking the time to come. It's been a very pleasant experience for us, and we thank you for the information you provided. And we all look forward to improving the pension provision for employees in the country. Thank you very much. It's appreciated. Stay home, stay safe, save a life. If you go out in public, wear a mask. Thank you all very much. And the meeting, but before we go, tomorrow we're in again at 9 o'clock. We have Fidelity Pension Services, and 10:30 to 12 we have Island Heritage Retirement Pension Plan. Then we have Silver Touch in the afternoon from 1:30 to 3, and then we have an admin meeting immediately following at 3 o'clock. Okay? So the meeting is adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thank you.